Welcome back to the Scripture Journey channel, where faith and mystery converge. Imagine a time when the world was engulfed in chaos and moral decline, where the light seemed to flicker and fade. But amidst this darkness, a seemingly ordinary man emerged, living an extraordinary life. A man who walked so closely with God that he never experienced death. Who was Enoch? What made him so special that he was taken directly to heaven? In this video, we'll uncover the secrets of Enoch's spiritual journey and explore how his life continues to inspire generations to this day. Get ready to dive into a story filled with mystery, faith, and an unparalleled connection with the divine. Stay with us until the end, because the lessons from Enoch's life just might transform the way you view your own spiritual journey. Enoch lived so intimately with God that instead of facing death, he was taken directly to heaven. He's remembered as the man who never died, a biblical enigma that transcends generations and still inspires to this day. In the early days, the earth was still young, bearing the marks of the first human generations more closely connected to the Creator than any that would follow. Yet, as time passed, humanity began to drift further and further away from the essence of the one who had formed them. The descendants of Adam and Eve spread across the land, multiplying and building their lives, but corruption and violence gradually took hold. It was an era of challenges, a time when darkness seemed to grow relentlessly. It was within this setting, between the splendor of creation and the depths of moral decay, that Enoch was born. A descendant of Seth, Adam's third son, Enoch carried the legacy of those who had once walked in Eden. But he wasn't just an heir to the fall. He bore a spiritual spark that drew him closer to God. From a young age, Enoch displayed a rare curiosity. His eyes shone with a hunger for answers to questions few dared to ask. As he grew, his presence became noticeable. He seemed to carry something special, an unrelenting pursuit of a divine connection that many had long forgotten. It was as if there was a call within him, pulling him towards something far greater, a journey destined to leave a mark on his life and on history. While the world around him sank deeper into darkness, Enoch walked in a different direction. He was a man like any other, subject to the same struggles and uncertainties. Yet there was something about his way of life that set him apart. His calm demeanor, his attentive gaze, and his serene approach to life intrigued those around him. While many were consumed by worldly distractions and concerns, Enoch seemed to see beyond the surface. To him, nature and the starlit sky weren't merely beautiful sights. They were living signs of a greater force. He saw God in every detail, as though everything around him spoke of an invisible creator. Enoch was indeed a simple man, but his soul was fueled by an unquenchable thirst for something eternal, something pure and transcendent. Deep within, he knew the world had a deeper purpose, and that a magnificent creator stood behind it all, waiting to be discovered. In the stillness of the night and under the shadows of trees at dusk, Enoch sought answers in prayer and reflection. He felt himself being drawn to a spiritual connection that no one around him seemed to understand. To others, he might have seemed distant or even eccentric, but Enoch walked a different path, guided by something profound and transformative. There was a calling within him, a silent voice propelling him toward an unknown yet divine purpose. One night, while immersed in thoughts and prayers, Enoch experienced something extraordinary. He felt a presence so powerful it seemed to envelop the very air around him. A voice, not audible but profoundly clear within his soul, spoke to him. It was a calling, an invitation to draw closer to God. From that moment, everything changed. Enoch realized he could no longer live tethered to the fleeting concerns of this world. He felt called to walk a different path, a higher path, one marked by surrender and devotion. Though it was a difficult choice, knowing it would set him apart from a normal life, Enoch was resolute. He understood that this journey was greater than himself, greater than anything he had ever known. Quietly, he began his walk, living each day more connected to God's presence and determined to fulfill the purpose for which he had been called. With every step, Enoch felt closer to unraveling the mystery of this calling. Perhaps those around him couldn't understand his journey, but he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. His heart carried a persistent sense that something magnificent awaited him, lying in wait until the moment he was ready. That unquenchable flame never dimmed in his soul. Enoch pressed on, attentive and willing, never imagining that his path would lead to experiences and revelations no other man would ever encounter. From that point on, he became a different man. His relationship with God wasn't merely about faith or words. It was a profound connection that guided his every decision and every step. While those around him sought wealth, achievements, and fleeting pleasures, Enoch chose his own path, one that seemed lonely to others. But for him, walking with God was the greatest triumph of his life. What so many desperately sought on earth he found in his communion with the Creator. This walk with God wasn't easy. Enoch faced challenges, days when it felt like he was walking against the wind, and moments when his faith was tested by life's difficulties. Yet his conviction remained unwavering. He knew with absolute certainty that he was on the right path. Whenever doubt threatened to creep in, God's presence made itself known, subtle yet powerful, renewing his strength and filling his heart with peace. And so, amidst faith and the trials of daily life, Enoch became a living example of surrender and love for the Creator. He knew his journey was unique, and that certainty filled him with a greater purpose. In an age marked by increasing violence and chaos, Enoch was like an oasis of serenity. His presence left an impression wherever he went, like a ray of light piercing through the darkness. Some admired him, others viewed him with suspicion. But no one could ignore him. Enoch, however, sought neither approval nor accolades. His only desire was to live in complete harmony with God. Day by day, his spiritual communion deepened, and he seemed to walk beyond the boundaries of the earthly realm. Without realizing it, his life was transforming into something extraordinary, something no one around him could fully comprehend. Enoch walked toward the invisible, unaware that his journey would forever alter the course of his story. With every step, his connection with God grew more intense and profound. It was as if he were diving deeper into an ocean of peace and wisdom. Enoch didn't just pray, he conversed with God. He felt the divine presence in everything, in the whisper of the trees, the twinkle of the stars, and the small wonders of everyday life. To Enoch, the world was no longer just a physical place. It had become a living reflection of God's presence. This closeness with the Creator allowed Enoch to see beyond what human eyes could perceive. He was filled with wisdom that was not of this world, as if God himself revealed hidden truths about creation, good and evil, and the mysteries of heaven. Despite receiving such grand visions, Enoch lived a simple and humble life. He never used the knowledge he was given to elevate himself, but rather to deepen his devotion and obedience to God. Those around Enoch recognized that he was different, though they couldn't quite grasp what made him so special. Yet Enoch didn't concern himself with the opinions of others. Faithful to the calling he felt, he continued his path as the world around him plunged further into chaos. Enoch lived in a different reality, guided by an invisible force. His soul seemed attuned to a unique frequency, a divine melody that enveloped and transformed him. Enoch always knew, even without fully understanding, that his life was destined for something extraordinary. Each day he gave more of himself, and God's presence in his life grew so intense it felt almost tangible. This sacred bond led him toward a destiny he couldn't foresee, but that awaited him, revealing its mysteries little by little. Over time, Enoch's life became more than a mystery. It turned into a living testimony of God's presence among men. He didn't need to speak much. His very way of living was like an open book, that proclaimed the goodness and faithfulness of the Creator. Those around him sensed something unique about his presence, something that made them pause and reflect on life and what truly mattered. There was a tangible peace surrounding Enoch, as if heaven followed him wherever he went. To some, he was an inspiration, a proof that it was possible to live with integrity even in a world marked by corruption. To others, however, his serenity provoked distrust or even fear. How could someone live so peacefully while the world seemed to crumble around him? But Enoch didn't worry about how others reacted. His priority was to draw closer to God. Without realizing it, his life became a light for those still searching for the right path, a beacon shining in the midst of darkness. Even those who didn't understand or rejected his faith were somehow touched by his presence. It was as though Enoch's life silently revealed a truth no one could ignore. He didn't isolate himself, but he wasn't like everyone else either. His unwavering faith made him a bridge between the human and the divine. Each day, this spiritual connection grew stronger, illuminating everything around him with an undeniable intensity. Time passed, and Enoch continued his walk with God, steadfast in his faith and conviction. He knew there was a purpose behind it all, something far greater than human understanding. Though he didn't know what awaited him, he sensed that something extraordinary was on the horizon, a destiny that only God could reveal. One day, as Enoch reflected deeply, he began to feel something different. It was as if a profound vision had been unveiled to him, a glimpse of the future. He began to see beyond the present, witnessing scenes of distant times filled with mysteries and warnings. It felt as though the Creator himself was showing Enoch the path humanity was on. Enoch saw a divine judgment, a moment when God's justice would be manifest on earth. Carrying the weight of these revelations was not easy. He saw humanity surrendering more and more to wickedness, consumed by pride and injustice that spread like a dense shadow. Yet God also showed him that evil would not be ignored forever. One day the Creator would bring balance and justice to the world. Moved by these visions, Enoch felt the need to share what he had seen. Although he knew many would mock or dismiss him, he decided to warn those around him. His words, firm and filled with authority, echoed like thunder in a calm sky. He spoke of the coming judgment and the urgency of turning back to God before it was too late. Some listened with indifference, but others were deeply moved. They felt his words carried an undeniable truth. Enoch knew his mission wasn't to convince everyone, but to plant a seed, a reminder that God sees all and acts in his time. As he proclaimed these truths, Enoch continued his walk with God, knowing that these visions were as much for him as they were for others. His spiritual journey brought him closer to the Creator with every step. With each revelation, Enoch felt that a new chapter in his path was approaching, waiting for the right moment to unfold. During his journey of profound connection with God, Enoch also experienced the joy and responsibility of fatherhood. When his son Methuselah was born, he felt a renewed sense of hope and the weight of a future that would extend far beyond his own days. Methuselah, over time, would become the longest living man in history, carrying forward a legacy deeply rooted in the desire to walk in God's ways. In his quiet wisdom, Enoch dedicated himself to raising his son with a sense of reverence and righteousness that had become hallmarks of their family. Yet, he knew his mission didn't end there. Deep in his heart, Enoch was convinced that his legacy was tied to something both great and terrible. He had a profound intuition that the world was heading toward a breaking point, a moment when God's justice would be revealed in full. If this fascinating journey through Enoch's story is resonating with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement is vital for us to continue sharing inspiring and transformative content. Now back to the video. This awareness wasn't just a vague feeling, it seemed to be a deep understanding, as if he could envision future generations, including the one that would one day witness a great flood. Years passed, and Methuselah grew under Enoch's guidance, becoming part of a lineage destined to play a critical role in humanity's future. Enoch lived long enough to see the generation of his grandson Lamech, and eventually that of Noah. There was something special about Noah, a spark in his eyes that reminded Enoch of his own journey, as though the boy too was called to a higher purpose. While Enoch might not have known exactly what the future held for Noah, he felt in his heart that his grandson would have a significant role in God's plans. Time moved on, and Enoch remained the pillar of his family, a living example of faith and communion with God. Every moment he spent with Methuselah and his descendants was a reminder that he was part of something far greater. He saw in the eyes of his children and grandchildren the continuation of his path, feeling that the Creator was preparing the way for them, even as Enoch himself moved toward a destiny that felt ever closer. As the years went by, Enoch's intimacy with God grew so intense that he seemed no longer fully of this world. It was as though his soul existed in a space between heaven and earth, wrapped in a communion no one around him could comprehend. While other men wrestled with their passions and worldly concerns, Enoch walked in silence, surrounded by a peace that transcended human understanding. His relationship with God reached such a profound depth that to many he appeared distant. His mind and spirit seemed to dwell in another dimension. For Enoch, words were unnecessary to communicate with God. A single thought, a quiet sigh, was enough for him to feel the divine presence responding, subtle yet powerful. This connection pulled him further from the physical world and closer to the eternal. This spiritual intensity did not go unnoticed. Those who observed Enoch felt something extraordinary, a calmness that was both inspiring and unsettling. Enoch was a living mystery, a man who walked the earth but seemed to already dwell in heaven. And day by day he sensed that something greater was drawing near, a calling that transcended time and space, a destiny beyond human comprehension. Then one day something happened that no one could explain. In the midst of his quiet pursuit of God, Enoch simply vanished. His family, his neighbors, everyone searched for him, combing through every place he frequented, calling out his name. But it was as if he had dissolved into the air. There was no trace of him, only the emptiness where a man once stood whose presence had been a source of peace. The news spread quickly, and soon the story of his mysterious disappearance was told with wonder. Some believed he had been taken by God, that the Creator himself had claimed him. Others tried to offer more rational explanations, but none made sense. To those who knew him well, his absence seemed in some way natural, almost as if his entire life had been a preparation for this moment. Enoch had always been different, a man who seemed to belong to another reality. Many came to believe that God truly had taken him. Those who had witnessed his faith, his unshakable peace, and his unique way of living could conceive of no other explanation. And so Enoch became a legend, a mystery, a man who did not know death, but who, in an instant, disappeared like the wind, leaving behind only the silence of an incomprehensible destiny. His departure carried with it a mystery that seemed to touch the soul of everyone who had known him. The stories about him took on an almost sacred tone, like echoes of something divine. People said God had taken him because his life on earth could no longer contain such closeness to heaven. Enoch became a living legend, a testament to the idea that walking with God with a pure heart could transcend the limits of human fate. The absence of Enoch left many in silence, reflecting on the meaning of his departure. For some, his story was a powerful metaphor, a reminder that walking with God could transcend the boundaries of ordinary life. Others, bewildered, looked up to the heavens for answers, wondering where the man who once walked among them now dwelled, as if he had joined the stars. Those who had the privilege of knowing Enoch in life remembered his unique presence, his serene gaze, his words filled with wisdom, and the peace that seemed to radiate from his soul. His story was passed down through generations, cherished like a precious treasure. Over time, Enoch was remembered not only as a man of faith, but as a bridge between the visible and the invisible, a constant reminder that there is more to life than meets the eye. As these stories spread, a new hope was born. Enoch left a legacy, a path of faith and closeness to God that many longed to follow. He showed that walking with the Creator was a journey within reach, an invitation to a life that transcended human limitations. This quiet yearning, like a subtle calling, began to echo in the hearts of those who heard his story, waiting for the next person courageous enough to answer it. Over time, the story of Enoch became a symbol of hope and mystery. He was not just the man who vanished without a trace, but the one who experienced God's presence so profoundly that he crossed the boundary between heaven and earth. For many, Enoch was proof that the Creator is closer than we imagine, and that walking with him is not only possible, but an invitation to connect with something eternal. Every detail of his journey was recounted with reverence. The man who walked with God, who lived among men yet carried within himself the radiance of the unseen. His steps, his faith, and his way of perceiving the world were remembered as examples to follow. Enoch was not a perfect man, but he was devoted. He chose to walk with God in a time when few cared to do so. His life was an open letter, a living testimony that continued to inspire generations long after his departure. Elders would tell his story under the starlit sky, while young listeners gazed with shining eyes, feeling the same call stirring within their hearts. The devotion with which Enoch lived made him eternal in the memory of the people, an invisible link that connected them to the Creator himself. And so, his story continued to resonate through the generations, a living reminder that by walking with God, we can touch the eternal and perhaps even become part of that sacred mystery. The story of Enoch, though ancient, remains alive, whispering through time and offering profound lessons. What makes his journey so extraordinary is not just that God took him without experiencing death, but the way he lived his life. Enoch showed us that walking with God is neither distant nor unattainable. It is a daily choice of closeness and surrender, renewed with every step. His life reminds us that true faith is not loud, but quiet and deep, revealed in the small decisions of everyday life. Enoch did not seek recognition or glory. He lived for God, and that was his greatest triumph. The simplicity with which he walked with the Creator teaches us that in the end, the measure of our lives is not in what we do or possess, but in the quality of our communion with God. In every generation, there are those who hear the call to walk more closely with God. Enoch's story is a reminder that such a journey is possible for all. He inspires us to seek that peace, that deep connection that transcends human understanding and brings us closer to the sacred. We may never fully comprehend what lies on the other side of this walk, but Enoch showed us that when we choose to walk with God, we connect to something far greater than ourselves, something eternal, full of mystery and wonder. Now, we want to hear from you. Which part of Enoch's story touched your heart the most? Was it his unwavering faith, his deep communion with God, or the mystery of his departure? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We're eager to read your reflections and grow together as a community of faith. Before we wrap up, I'd like to invite you to join us in a brief moment of prayer. Wherever you are right now, close your eyes for a moment, quiet your mind, and open your heart. Let's talk to God together. Heavenly Father, today we reflect on the life of Enoch, a man who walked so closely with you that he transcended the ordinary, living in profound communion with you. Lord, may his example inspire our hearts to seek the same intimacy, to place our lives in your hands, trusting that you have a greater purpose for each of us. Help us, Lord, to live with the simplicity and dedication that marked Enoch's walk. May we see your presence in every detail of our journey, just as he did. Let our daily choices be a response to your call, even when we don't fully understand what lies ahead. Father, teach us not to fear the unknown, but to trust that with you we are always walking in the right direction. Strengthen our faith so that, like Enoch, we may be lights in the darkness and living reflections of your goodness in this world. We ask that this story not only touch our hearts, but also renew our hope and inspire us to live for you. In Jesus' name, we thank you and praise you. Amen. May this prayer inspire you to draw even closer to God. If you enjoyed this video, we've left a special suggestion on the screen for you to watch next. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is essential for us to continue sharing messages of faith and inspiration like this one. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May God bless you abundantly, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then,